Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Friday slashing while you're napping so you won't wake up the next day. Hey! Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Jason soaring teens till morning and you cannot run away. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Michael seething, it's not the season, but pumpkins on display. Welcome, boys and girls. Snuggle up nice and cozy with a warm drink and listen to the horrors that the Christmas season has to bring. And what terribly delicious horrors we have for you today, which will cause you to have visions of sugared flesh cookies in no time. Today, we are going to be looking at the king himself's favourite movie, the cult 1974 classic, Black Christmas. But no, foolish child, we're not going to stop there. We are going to be looking at how it spawned fared with the remakes? Sequels? The barely anything to do with the original film 2006 and 2019 remakes. So sit back, relax, and Merry Spookmas. When we think of slasher films, we usually think of the unholy trinity: Freddy, Jason, and Michael. But before they even existed, the 70s was haunted by the fearsome, the gruesome, the murderous Billy. No, not that Billy. This Billy. Hailed by some as the original slasher movie, Black Christmas takes place in a sorority house where the sisters are getting ready for the Christmas holidays. The film is about a killer breaking into the house and murdering the sorority sister Claire and hiding her body in the attic. When Claire doesn't show up to meet her dad to go home for the holidays, her friends Jess, Bob, and Phil become concerned that she's gone missing, and the hunt begins to find out what's really happening on this bloodthirsty Christmas. Slasher films are usually synonymous with campiness and over-the-top death scenes, so it might come as a surprise to you, as it was to me, that the granddaddy of this genre is a nuanced psychological horror which even explores political topics such as abortion and women's rights. Some of the scenes and tropes used in this film will feel eerily familiar to many horror fans, as they were probably used to inspire future slasher films, as well as the humour of Scream. Definitely the humour of Scream, including phone calls from a serial killer and their own Officer Doofy.
Well, that's the number at the sorority house. Felicia? Yeah, it's a new exchange.
But you need to remember as we look at this film that this was the original, and it makes sense why these tropes live on for generations of horror fans to experience. They are truly terrifying. The opening scene is shot very stylistically from the killer's perspective as we watch him break into the sorority house. The juxtaposition of the interior scenes of the sorority house getting ready for the Christmas holidays and the deep breathing exterior scenes of the killer breaking in is enough to fill anyone with tension and anxiety, as everyone is completely oblivious to the possible danger that they're in. Meanwhile, we learn that the sisters have been receiving some obscene phone calls, and oh boy, when I say obscene, I mean very detailed descriptions of what this person would like to do to the girls, and that's enough to make your skin crawl. And if it doesn't make your skin crawl, then it's on too tight. But this leads to one of my favourite lines in the movie, courtesy of Bob.
Oh, why don't you go find a wall socket and stick your tongue in it? That'll give you a charge.
Claire becomes so upset that Bob provoked the super-tongued pervert that she goes upstairs, and merely 11 minutes into the movie, we get our first and most iconic death scene. Claire thinks that she can hear the cat that lives in the house called Claude, and looks in her wardrobe only to be trapped and suffocated by Billy, and then we get this shot. As the sorority sisters are teasing their house mother with an old lady's nightie as a Christmas present, and are laughing. Great joke, guys. Billy takes Claire's body into the attic. Every horror film has its focus, the thing that plays on your mind after you leave the cinema. For Jaws, it was the fear of going back into the water. With Nightmare on Elm Street, it was the fact that you couldn't go to sleep. And for Halloween, it was don't babysit children. Yeah, Don't risk your life by becoming a babysitter, kids. But for Black Christmas, it's the fear of being in your own home. For someone without your knowledge or raising any suspicion to be wandering around your home. The whole time the sisters search for Claire, when they realise that she has gone missing, she's right above their heads the entire time. When the Christmas party is over, our main protagonist and survivor girl, Jess, receives a phone call from her boyfriend Peter and arranges to meet with him tomorrow to have a talk. And we definitely know that there's trouble in paradise because she pulls out the old Han Solo on him.
I love you.
I know.
Next day, Claire's dad becomes worried as she doesn't show up to meet him to go home for the holidays, and we learn that 70s kids all deserve coal this year. And the adults aren't so great either.
Sorry, I should have been keeping a better watch on. I think so. Yeah, well, I said I was sorry.
Jess goes to meet with Peter, and we find out the reason that she wants to talk with him so badly is because she's pregnant and she wants an abortion. And Peter, well, he doesn't react to this so well. When Jess goes home after her very constructive chat with Peter, where he is very understanding of her concerns over having a baby at her age, she receives another creepy phone call. But this one not only mentions Billy, but also keeps repeating,
"Where did you put the baby, Betsy?"
You've got the wrong number.
and after a conversation with Peter, that's pretty weird. Now, I know that this is a scary and intense scene, but I just need to put out there, oh my god, how shiny is Jess's hair in this film? It's so pretty! Claire's dad tells the house mother that his daughter's missing, and he meets up with his daughter's very responsible friends. They go to the police station and report her missing, but the officers don't take it very seriously. Later on, however, Claire's boyfriend freaks out, and when he's told that Claire's gone missing and the police aren't taking it seriously, he goes down to the police station and kicks up a massive fuss. Now, because a little girl has recently gone missing, and Claire's boyfriend is wearing an entire bear skin, they begin to take it a little bit more seriously, because you know that this guy means business.
No.
Cut to our second death in the house of our poor, responsible and loving house mother. Now this is where I have a theory about this film. Claude the cat is working with Billy. Hear me out. When Claire dies, she's led to her death by thinking that Claude is in the cupboard. The house mother is killed when she thinks that she hears Claude in a scene which I am pretty sure inspired the heavy rain scenes.
Claude? 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 Where are you?
Anywho, she gets hung by a hook and killed, and because she told the girls that she was leaving for the holidays that night, no one suspects that she's missing. The sorority sisters have been out this whole time searching for the little girl that's gone missing and hoping to find Claire, but unfortunately they find that the little girl was murdered in the park. Claire returns home rattled and upset, and after receiving just another horrendous phone call, boyfriend of the year, Peter, decides to jump scare her. Jess calls the police to report the freaky phone calls, and Officer Doofy fails to report this to the detective, even though he doesn't make the link that is happening in the same house where Claire lived. Luckily, Claire's dad was in the station with the search party, overhears the conversation and tells the detective. Jess and Peter sit down to have the conversations they've all been waiting for about the pregnancy, where Peter very romantically tells Jess that they are going to get married, and that's that. Jess makes the point that she still has aspirations for her life and she isn't ready to get married and have a baby. This intimate scene when I first watched the film, debating the sides for and against abortion, was actually quite a surprise to me. At the time in America, abortion had just become legalized in around 1972, and with the feminist movement and the invention of the pill, women's rights and control that they have of their bodies and autonomy would have been a huge topic for this era. And this topic isn't just thrown in. It's woven into the story. Between the fears of sexual violence shown in Billy's phone calls, the traditional ideals of women versus modern women, humorously shown in Claire's bedroom when her dad inspects it for clues of where she might be. Claire is shown as an innocent, while in her bedroom hangs this poster. So fascinating to me that this is such an involved storyline and a carefully crafted storyline in a slasher film. And the whole idea is just really interesting, and the more and more I watch this film, the more and more I find in it, and I just adore movies like that, and I highly recommend that you watch it as well. The conversation between Jess and Peter resorts to Peter threatening her that if she gets an abortion,
you're going to be very sorry.
The detective arrives to have a chat with Jess about the phone calls and becomes very suspicious of Peter when he sees him storm out. The officers decide to tap the phones so they can see if they can trace the calls, and oh my god, my respect for 70s police officers who are doing phone call tracing really rose, because look at the amount of computer stuff and running that he needs to do to get to these computers. Later that night, while Jess is waiting for the phone to ring, carol singers arrive at the front door and Jess goes out to watch them, which means that Jess cannot hear Bob struggle upstairs while Billy kills her, in a hauntingly beautiful scene. After Bob's death, Jess starts to receive disturbing phone calls again, and at one point, the voice uses the same phrase that Peter used to describe the way that he felt when Jess was speaking about getting an abortion. This puts further suspicion on Peter to the detectives that he's the one behind the killings, which is reinforced by Peter calling up in an emotional state, pleading with Jess not to get rid of the baby. Finally, the police are able to trace the disturbing calls and they find...
The caller is in the house. The calls are coming from the house.
Jess immediately freaks out and goes looking around the house to see if she can find Bob and Phil, which she finds them in a very horrific and bloody state. And this is the moment where we first see our glimpse of Billy. Now, throughout the entire film, you merely see shadows of Billy. It's very, very subtle and awesome the way that it's done. But here we see the iconic eye through the crack of the door. So Jess runs downstairs while she's being chased and hides herself in the basement. But who should be there? The best boyfriend in the world, Peter. And at this point, Jess is really showing that she's very suspicious of Peter, and she tries to hide from him, and Peter is being very creepy. Cut to the exterior shot of the house where you can hear Jess screaming bloody murder as the police rush inside to find Peter dead over Jess's body. Jess is alive and they take her into the house. And the police believe that they have found the killer. They believe that Peter was the one who killed everyone and that Jess killed him in self-defense. So the police run around, they clean up the house, and very responsibly they leave Jess tucked up in bed. But the film ends on the final shot of the attic where Claire, the house mother, and Billy are all still together. The police didn't get their killer. Dun dun dun! But anyway, Black Christmas is an absolute amazing film because it is so much more a psychological horror than it is a slasher movie. But you can definitely see where later renditions like Halloween and Friday the 13th got their inspiration from. Even though John Carpenter claims that he never watched this film. Well, we shall see. But yeah, Black Christmas is absolutely amazing and I highly recommend anyone to watch it. I loved it every single time that I watched it to make this video. I loved it more and more and more, and to be honest I could talk about this film for hours, but we have more disturbing things to watch.